Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and on this stream we work on a Django app, and we're going to continue on the homeschooling app that I've been building, and hopefully, with any luck, finish off the project that we've been working through, which is a PDF project for an end of the school year report. So it's a homeschool application, like I said, and at the end of the year, the families need to be able to print off PDF records, and so I've been building a report set that has all the PDFs that they need, and we're going to, with any luck, complete that set tonight, the fourth PDF in the list. So that's what we're going to do. Before I get into that, I want to say thank you to the patrons that I have on Patreon. If you want to support me on Patreon, you're welcome to do so at patreon.com/mblehman. And I want to say thank you to Rupert, Andrew, Dragos, Ryan, Patrick, Eric, Fred, Aaron, Philip, Miguel, Shivan, and Monty. Appreciate your contributions. It helps me stay motivated to work on this stuff. So let's get into the work. I've got my terminal up here, which is not on the right tab, but we'll get there. And let's resize the window a little bit. I'm running a little behind today, not quite on top of things. But here we are in our project. And we're going to look at the particular issue that we've got going on. There were 4 PDFs that go into the bundle that I've been trying to produce. And it's time for the most complex of the 4 PDFs. The one that is most distinct from the others, and that's going to be the interesting part of what we need to do. And it's this idea of showing a list of all of the completed tasks for each student for each course in the school year. So let's contextualize that by taking a look at what the HTML version of this is. There's not quite an analog, but we can start from something to give you an idea, and then we'll back into that and hopefully recycle most of the same template, but it's a little bit different, and there's some different kinds of data that have to go into it, so it's not going to be quite the same. All right, so we've got our local host started up. We can go to port 5000 where the app is. It's not the place where let's get over there. And if we go to the app, and I'll put the other reports into context. So previously, we've been looking at these reports, and they've been these 3 reports right here. There's a progress report, which is essentially all of the grades that a student has. And there is an attendance report and a resource report. And you know what? I just realized I forgot to put up the comment box. So apologies for anybody who has a comment. I'm going to pop that out so I actually see what you're talking to me about. And, if you have any comments, feel free to ask. That is part of why I'm here. It's not just to go through my personal project. So feel free to ask me anything about Python, Django, or web development. All right. So sorry if you had a comment there and I didn't get to see it and didn't get to pop out. Anyway, so we've got 3 different reports here. And the progress report is like grades. The attendance report is how many days your student was part of the school year. This is required by a lot of governments and local states in the United States. And then there's a resource report to say what materials did you use with a course. So those are what those 3 reports are. But the big one is the actual activity. What did a student do during the school year? And from a modeling perspective, there's probably a couple things to outline. Is that a student is part of a grade level. This should be fairly obvious. I don't know how all the school systems in the world work, but at least in the United States, you're part of a grade level, and within a grade level, there are multiple courses. So this example data is pretty limited, but you can see here, this is probably the one that we'll want to use, is this example of a third grade class, which has 1 student in it. So you'd want all of the tasks that the student completed for each of these 3 courses listed here. That's the objective. That's what we're after. To look at it, though, so we have this kind of view that has the actual grade, and we can see that here are the list of tasks, but the reality is what we're really after for the end of the year school report is actually these ones that are kind of grayed out. And we don't really need the numbering on them anymore. That makes less sense. It's just a list of activities of what did the user do. So let's chat a moment about the modeling of this to see what data we're going to pull ultimately. So I have a model diagram that we can take a peek at. And it is way too big for the viewport on the stream. Let me resize it down to something that actually fits in frame. And so the relationship that we're after is, oh, come on now. Where is it? So it's this thing at the bottom here. So students are part of a school year because they are connected to a grade level through this enrollment model. So that connects student over here. But what we're really after is, what did they do? And that's the coursework model in the system. And the coursework is a mapping of the student to a set of tasks. And the tasks are connected to a particular course, which is over here. So you can see student, I can't get it all in frame at one time where you can actually see everything, but the student's over here, and it has a foreign key in this coursework model, and there's another foreign key to a course task that's over on this side, and then that goes up to a course, and there's a relationship between the grade level and the course stuff that we'll get into. It's actually a many-to-many for weird reasons that I can go into in some detail, but we don't need to get too far into it. John, good question. What do I use for my ERD? ERD is, what does that stand for again? Entity relationship diagram? I think that's what it means, but I'm drawing a blank on that term, possibly. But the answer is a package. I didn't build it at all. It's a package called Django extensions, which is pretty awesome. So Django extensions. Oh, it even brings me right up to, I've gone to this page before. It's my top link here. So it's a package called graph models. And it's essentially a management command that uses a couple of built-in templates, which I guess you can customize, but you can graph your models here. So what I do to produce that diagram that you just saw is I have a make file that has all of my apps, my Django apps that are built there. And I provide, there is this one argument that I provide, and I can describe that in a second, but you can see you give it graph models and you give it all of the actual apps that you care about, and it will put them all together in a big diagram. At some point, if my app gets too big, this will become limited in its value, but for now, it's a manageable amount. And if I ever feel the need to split it out, I can do that. So the other thing worth commenting on is a recent feature of the graph models is this rank dir BT. It stands for rank direction, I believe. I cannot tell you what the BT part stands for, though. Essentially, the important element, though, is that it puts the models in what to me seems like a more logical order. So if I open up the diagram again, I'm not going to resize it this time, but you can see that the order here is like the user goes at the top and all the data that belongs to the user is sort of at the bottom. So everything kind of tiers up into a tree, which is like how I think of it in my head. It's like a user has a school, and that school has a school year and grade levels and courses, and it kind of goes down. In the previous version of the graph models tool, it actually inverted that. So the stuff that you would think as more at the leaves in the model, like grades way down at the bottom. Well, actually, that's out of frame, so you can't see that. But the stuff like coursework, the thing that we're going to talk about today, and some other concepts of like graded work and grades and all of these little bits that are down here showed up at the top, which to me didn't make a whole lot of sense. So I was really thankful when they added that option. So that's how I get that diagram. Okay, so we have our page that shows this is kind of what this is going to look like in the final PDF. There will be none of this related Chrome around this, so none of the buttons will be there. This link will not be there. None of these buttons will be there. So we can kind of distill it down to what matters, but I think it's going to be, and it's even going to be more simplistic than this. It'll probably say something like, coursework for student name for 3rd grade is sort of the format some of the other PDFs have taken. And we can replicate that pattern and then fill in the appropriate data, doing chunking by each course and going through all of the tasks. And what's important by it, the important elements are, what did the student actually complete? And then what was the date of that completion? So that's what we're going to build. I'm trying to think of, where's going to be the source of that data and how do we package all together. I'm going to try and follow the same pattern that we've been using for some of this other stuff, which from previous streams, if you watched, was essentially building a data class. It's going to be less relevant this time. The reason we were building data classes previously was because there's both an HTML report view and a PDF report, but there's not a one-for-one mapping this time. But the building of that data class is convenient for what we need to pass into the PDF generation functions. So I'm going to use that same pattern in that way. And we'll probably be able to build from the same enrollment. So given the same entry point, which is to say the student is enrolled in this grade level, we can go look up everything related to what they need. Okay, so let's start down that path and see how it goes. Okay, I see. MS Visio and Workbench are pretty good tools. There's also, like, at work I use, when I have to, Lucid charts. I don't know your needs, John, but there was an interesting package. What's it called? Oh man, I'm blanking on it. But there's if you have any need to do like AWS stuff and make diagrams of cloud infrastructure, there's a really cool Python package that can actually build a chart for you. The downside of the tool is that you don't control the layout and the exact positioning. Frankly, I didn't control that on that entity diagram that you saw earlier. But it's a cool tool for building up, like, here's what my cloud infrastructure is. And I apologize, but I can't remember what it's called. It's a Python tool, and you build the entire diagram with Python, which was what was cool about it. Shoot. Well, maybe if it comes back to me, I'll try and comment on it. But there's a cool tool out there for building architecture diagrams and that kind of stuff in Python. All right, where am I going? We need to go to the report URLs, I think, these office URLs, and we need to build up a final page that we've got here that will be, I guess we can call it coursework or something like that. I don't know. Doesn't really matter, but I'm trying to think of a good name because this doesn't have an analog. Well, while I'm thinking of a name, let's bring up the views. So we know we have our dashboard, and we know we need to make a new block. So let's bring up the report dashboard, and we can add our new block. It's going to be something related to courses, so let's put them alphabetically. We'll call it the Coursework Report. I don't know. I'm not crazy about the name, but it's a start. And it's going to take the same entry point of an enrollment ID, which is just like the others. So in order to make this useful, we need to have a route. Well, let's call it coursework. There's not going to be a comparable link like on the site anywhere, which is why the name is not terribly important here. But this is an admin kind of page. And when I say there's not going to be a link, I mean there's not going to be a user link. So when someone who's actually using the site will not be able to get to the same kind of report. It'll only be available in the PDF version. Looks up ops. I'm using Mac OS. I have been using it for many years. Works for me. It's got a lot of the terminal stuff that I need. No, but if you're happy with Windows or if you're happy with Linux, make the tool that makes you happy, or use the tool that makes you happy. I don't really have a strong feeling about it. LuxOps, which I'm curious, which operating system do you use? Oh shoot, there's no view. Focus, Matt. Is it better to program in Windows? Oh man, good question. So here's the real challenge. I can't really answer that well for you. I've been using Mac OS. So I got my first Mac in 2014. And so my last Windows machine was when I worked for Lockheed Martin. And I think I was using Windows 7. So I'm not really well positioned to answer your question there. I've heard Windows has made great strides in their usability, so I don't have any reason to knock Windows. I just don't know enough about it to really speak too intelligently on it. All right, so we want this is going to be our coursework report. And for the moment, I'm just going to put that in there just like that, just so this will resolve here. And when we refresh this page, now there should be a view. And so this actually goes somewhere. All right, so when we click on the PDF's dashboard, we now have this space to go to. And to have an ID that we can work from, I'm just going to go to this progress report, and I need the ID from this URL. It's an enrollment ID. It's not super important for y'all to know too much about, but it's the key link that we'll that we'll need for all of our data. And I should be able to hit generate, and it's going to generate a different report, not the one we want, but everything should work. Yep. So you can see we've got our attendance report, which is very boring, and that's okay. So now we know that this works, and we need to replace it with the content that we care about. So we have to, it's going to be the exact same pattern, although I guess this should be coursework. So what do we have to do? We need to focus on this section right here and build a new data class. We want to build it from an enrollment. We aren't going to care about the date, the current date, that doesn't matter. And eventually it will have a make coursework report, which isn't going to exist yet. So that's all going to blow up in my face if I try to run this view again. But it's better to start positioning this stuff. So let's do, this will be the coursework. We'll just kind of work backwards from the details that are missing, and until we're happy with it. So we know that this doesn't exist yet. Let's also go ahead and make the test case. I want test to prove that this axis is right. So this is reports, whoops, report test views. And we can copy from the attendance report, which is the most similar thing. Take this thing and we'll put it, where should we put this? We'll put this after the attendance, the actual attendance report. Oh, is it at the bottom? Okay, cool. So we're going to the bottom of the file and we'll change attendance to coursework. And then change the occurrences of this to the right thing. Cool. We run this test. This one should work because it has the right access control on it. But the second one should not. The second one's going to blow up and say, what are you talking about? There's nothing with that name. There'll be a name error of some kind. Yep. So it's a name error because we have not defined this data class yet, this coursework report context, which is kind of the next step. So what we want to do is go up to the top on the imports. Actually, do I want to what's the right sequence here so that my running server does not blow up on me. Let's go straight to the context, and let's copy from this attendance report, and let's just take all this for the moment. And we'll put this after the attendance report. We'll put it like that. It's going to fail because we've got two things named the same way, so let's rename it to the right thing. And, oops, here too, Coursework Report context. And then, we're not going to need this school dates thing. We're not going to need dates or days attended, so we can get rid of those. And get rid of that, get rid of that. Okay, so our context isn't right yet, but it's at least something that could work if so desired. Although we don't want that either because we changed that in the view. So now we've got it down to the minimum amount of stuff that we actually probably will need. I mean, we'll definitely need student. We'll need grade level. We need to be able to look up some of this stuff. So a bunch of that is right, but not all of it. So let's return back to the views thing. And now we can import the coursework report context. Give it the comma that it requires. And go back down here. So we've solved this part partially. We haven't actually put in the data that we are sure that we need, but it's a start. And then we need to be able to have this actual PDFs function that will take this content and produce the content. So let's go up to the PDFs module, and now we'll do the coursework report context here too. We will take all of this, make a new function, whoops, like so, and then change this to be the coursework report context, and make an attendance report, Matt. That's proper English. And then make a coursework report. All right. So this version should pass. It's using the wrong template, so we'll come back to that. But now if I go to this thing, I think it should work. It's still going to do an attendance report, and it's going to be not the right data anymore because we took out a bunch of that stuff, but it's generating something. Also, at this point, this should work too. Should give it 200. Boom. Okay. So that's good. Yep. Nothing to say there beyond that. So what is next in this process? We need to make a new report. So we'll call this the coursework report PDF. Now this test over here should fail because that template doesn't exist. Yep, missing that template. So let's find the attendance report PDF, which is right here. We'll copy this thing, and we'll create coursework report PDF HTML and paste in all the content. Well, then we'll work with that template in a minute. This should be back to a passing test, which will prove that we have the right template now. Great. All right. So let's, I think what I've done here and quickly, so maybe that was a bunch to process. I apologize if it was too much. But I've set up all of the scaffolding, if you will, of what's going to be critical for testing this report out. From here, it's now building in, like, what is the data we actually care about, and then what is the template? And frankly, that's like all that's really there to the rest of this, plus a minor bit to like hook it into the actual bundling. But the rest of the work is going to be spending a bunch of time in this template until it looks okay, and devising the right query for the data class, which might require its own test case. Thinking through the bits we're going to need, where we'll process all that together. So, well, let's come back to what do we need? And it might not be as hard as I think it will be. So we need to do what? We need to go through, so a student must be in a grade level. That is going to be an assumption, because this is the end of the year report, and if they're not in the grade level, what the heck are they even doing? And we know this to be true because we're going to build this from an enrollment instance, which is a guarantee that there's a connection between a student and a grade level. Once we have that grade level, we can enumerate the courses within the grade level. And then within the courses, we need to find all of the coursework that the student did for each course. Attached to each of those coursework records is the actual task. That's the thing that we're going to have to display. So the coursework has like when the student did something, and the task has the information about the thing that they did. So they have to be combined together. This will make more sense as we start doing the query. I apologize if you're like, I know this is kind of deep in the data modeling for my application, and may not feel so relevant here. Let's get rid of this row. I think the first thing that we could try is, can we just even display the, well, let's start at the very beginning. Can we get the title right? What's the title going to be? Ryan, I'm looking at your question, so let me give me a second to process what you said here. With the ORM, where and why are you using data classes? Okay, good question. The reason for the data class is less about combining multiple models. Well, maybe it kind of is. Let's take a look at that file, and we'll notice what I've named these things, and this is very specific. There's a reason for this. I've called these contexts, and the reason is that these contexts are used in multiple places. One is actually as a view context, and so when someone is viewing a report on the site, there is a context that gets passed in and generates an HTML version of this report. Here you can see it here. Comparatively, so this is for, actually we can do a point for point comparison. So we take this same thing, that was the progress report. So let's drop it here and do the generation. And so if we have the two side by side, you can see, I mean, maybe not immediately, but if you take a moment to like adjust your vision, you can see that it's the same data. And so that is why I used the data class. It was to recognize that there are two separate use cases for the data that I care about. And so putting it together, packaging it up, that context that is going to go into the view, packaging it up as a data class made this reusable thing that that was useful both for that view context and that PDF context. The other benefit that it had is that I can start using the type annotation that comes with that. And so you can see when we looked at that PDFs module, I can set the context here and say like this, I expect that this context is going to be passed in. And what this enables me to do is that if I were to ever modify the HTML report, if there was something missing, or if this would be a good clue for me that, hey, you need to go update the PDF report 2. There's nothing in this template that is asserting on the elements of the context, so that part is limited. But it's just a reminder of this thing is used in multiple places. This is not something I do normally in Django projects. This is actually the first time I've ever attempted this. It's a bit of an experiment, but so far it seems to be working out pretty well. There are probably other ways to tackle this of what do you do when you have a context that is definitely used in multiple scenarios. One of the ways I've seen this handled, for instance, is there was a package, I think it's Django WheezyPrint, actually. Let's just go check. So Django WheezyPrint. Wheezy. And this wasn't quite what I needed, so I didn't end up using it, but I think they have this similar idea in that their idea was like, what if we made a view that is serving both as the HTML view and the PDF view, and depending on how people request it. And so that was class-based view method of doing this that allowed them to recycle the context. So what I did is like separated my context very explicitly and then made 2 separate view paths to go use that. And this project seems to be, from my cursory read of it, combining that all together in one thing. So it's just a different strategy that I didn't take, but it looked like an interesting project. But since I knew that my PDFs are not going to be something that I want individually downloadable, I just didn't want to deal with that. I only wanted to put it into a bundle that was all the things together. I did not take this route. But that's another way you could think about this, is if you had to do with PDFs with your stuff. All right, so we have what now? We've got, I'm kind of losing myself on what I actually need to do next. I think we're at this point where, oh, I remember. We said we were going to build out the title. So I'm not going to call this coursework because that's not a concept that I think I expose in the application. Well, I say that. Let me look at the glossary of terms that I use in the site. So this is a site, schooldeskapp.com, and then I have a help system that has the documentation, and then I had terminology. No. So this is not something that I tell users about. They're only exposed to the idea of there are courses. So I don't want to expose some new idea in a new weird place where they're not anticipating it. That's a modeling detail. So what I want to do, I guess, is call this the course report for the student in the grade level in the school year. So that tells me that we need these 3 data elements. That's good. And so back on the view, we have, it's pulling out the student, the grade level, and the school year. That's good. So it's not critical that I be super efficient on this admin page, but it's nice to get that right from the get-go. So let's get the title working on our new template and make sure, actually we might already be done. I don't think there's anything new to do. Let's go back and check out this. Well, close. Courses report. I don't know. I'm going to put something there and my wife can tell me, my wife, who's a customer of my product here, can tell me if she likes it or not. Mujtaba, welcome. Hi. Thanks for joining in. And I apologize if I don't pronounce your name correctly, but I give it my best. All right, so what do we need next? We need the list of courses. So we know the way we're going to structure this is that the grade level is a set of courses. And so we need them in order. And then we're going to kind of iterate through each one and put the stuff, display the stuff there. You're very welcome. I'm hoping you all are learning from this. If you have any questions, This is obviously very specific about my application, but I'm happy to take a pause and explain why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. So if there's something you see that you don't understand, just give me a holler, and I'll try and pause and describe what's going on. So I think for the moment, none of this school dates stuff is actually going to matter, but it's a flex box that's going to be perhaps useful. So let's comment that out as like just an example to use. So I think what I'm going to want, well, this is going to be interesting. We need, what do we need? we kind of need a nested structure here. Let me just sketch out what I think this is going to look like. So we're going to go through 4 course in courses. If you have a general question, Mujtaba, like, go ahead and ask it, man. I'm all ears. So we've got our for loop of courses, and then this is just specific to a singular student. There's going to be another one of these for the next student, so we don't have to get really complicated here. And so there's going to be a nested structure that will be useful. So it will be roughly something like for course. How am I? I'm gonna have to carefully craft how this is gonna go. This will be, I'll just call it a course info. And I hate, this is sort of like a wishy-washy name. But I don't, there's one of these things I don't know how to do with templates. And maybe I'll have some ideas. There are sometimes where you need to take a couple of different models and you like bolt them together. Like they need to go into a list, but you need to like reference them at the same time. And what do you do in that scenario? In some of the scenarios, and the thing that I'm describing as an info here is going to be a dictionary that is stitching together the 2 models into one thing, so that when I can do course-info.coursework and course-info.course-task or something like that. And I don't know if there are better ways to handle that, but that's what's going on in my head. Anyway, I'll finish sketching this out, and I'll get back to the questions that are over there. So I'm gonna have something like course dot. Now this is where it's doubly terrible because info doesn't pluralize really well. So that's why I really don't like this name. So here's the rough idea of what's going into this template. We're going to loop, do an outer loop, and then do an inner loop. Let me take these questions in turn. Janadas, again, apologies if I'm butchering pronunciation. Do I record this lesson? Yes. So you can go to YouTube, and all of these streams are put up on my site. You can search for Matt Lehman. I even put them on a special playlist. There's I think I call it something like How to Build SaaS with Python and Django. It has a really long name. So it was recommended on the internet to make something long and descriptive. So you can go through there and go watch all these streams. You can actually go all the way back to, I believe it's stream number 60 something, where I start this whole project, and that was coming up on 2 years ago now. So there's a ton of content there. If you want to catch up later, you're welcome to. Okay, getting back to Mujtaba's comment there. Good question. Why do I prefer Django templates over JavaScript? The reason is because I'm one person, and I've kind of explained this before, and I've actually even wrote. So this is not my first SaaS project, and it's not even the first one I've used on this stream. You can go and find Matt Lehman failed SaaS. Hopefully that'll turn up a result. Yeah, here we go. So I'll drop this link into the chat, which you're welcome to read. And that's my experience from a previous SaaS project that I built. And in that project, I went all in on the full JavaScript side stuff. And it was just me working on this project. It was actually me building out a college consulting project, which you can go learn more of the details. And it was for my wife. Again, there's a theme. I've been building tools for my wife. That's how I'm doing stuff here. And that project, what I tried to do was create the API layer, the Django side, which I was very comfortable with. And then I used Ember.js to do the JavaScript, the client side. And I had this idea in mind of this like good architecture where I'd have these things very separated, and that separation would enable me to do stuff. I don't know. I guess I didn't really fully think it through, because here's what happened. In the process of doing that, I found that I implemented everything twice. So I would think about like I need to have universities and kind of schedules. It was all about finding schedules of when are deadlines coming up, because my wife was an independent educational consultant who helped with like college admissions and that kind of stuff. So the idea behind that was to figure out all those dates and do scraping and all the details in there. So I would think through all of the modeling for what do I actually need to build for the functionality for the application. And so I would build up that API layer. I would build up the JSON APIs. I used Django REST framework, which is it's a great project. I'm not going to knock that at all. It was a good tool. And I would get the API and the concept that I wanted to have, the resources for that project. And then what I would do is I would go to the client side and I would start to implement the feature using the JavaScript templating stuff that was available in Ember, and build it all out. But what happened along that way is that Ember had an expectation of understanding the models of my system. So I just finished doing the API modeling, and I built my database model, and then I had to do the modeling a second time, the same exact stuff on the client side, just so that the two could talk to each other. Now I know there's lots to be said for that. It could be that I chose the wrong tool for the job. It could be that there's so many other ways to do it, like GraphQL. There's tons of other ways to build JavaScript apps. But for me, for my limited context and my limited time, I found that I was just doing this double work of doing it both client and API. With that particular project, at some point I got so frustrated. I'm like, what if I just tried to implement this in Django templates, which I had a ton of experience with from work. And so I thought, I'm going to spend like a weekend to see how far I got. I had spent probably about a year doing the API and the rich client model. I completely re-implemented all the functionality of the whole site in about a week, which is a little embarrassing to say in some regard of like, oh, I spent a year doing something that was able to do in server templates in a week. That seems like a waste of my time. But it was an important lesson for me to experience, and that was that, if you are a solo developer building a project, then recognize the constraints that are there. And, maybe if you're wanting to make a rich client, ask, do you really need it? Like, nothing about the app that I was building, looking back, had any need for rich client functionality. It was CRUD pages, create, read, update, delete kind of operations all the way down. So that's why I was able to complete it so quickly, because server rendered pages are fantastic at that. So it was pretty eye-opening of what I did there. There's a bunch of other lessons that I learned from that link of all sorts of stupid mistakes that I made. I was basically chasing technology and wanting to integrate a bunch of stuff before I actually solved the problem for my customer. So with this project, I've taken a very different tact of solve the problem at hand, do it in the fastest way possible with the most minimal set of tools that I can get away with, and it has worked out pretty well for me. Now, granted, the SaaS you're watching and learning about now is not like wildly successful, and it's not like paying my bills at my house, and I don't ever anticipate it doing that. But yeah, that was my experience. Yep, SEO is a great point. There's whole other challenges that come about of like, what do you do with all this client side stuff? Do you do server rendering of your client? And it gets really, really complicated. So that was my experience. All right. Hopefully that was informative to you, Mujtaba. All right, let's get back to this template that I've got here. So let's fill in the next layer, which I think we're just going to put some kind of we're going to put some kind of header here. So we'll probably I'm just going to take all of this. You're welcome. And we've got, I'm going to use as much of the formatting as I can. Let's change this from an extra large font to a large. I'm using Tailwind, which is what makes this so fast to iterate on. And let's change the body of this to be course. So what we're assuming is that the context is going to have this courses thing, which, as you can see, it does not yet. So we need to get the courses. And one of the things that I have is the courses have a certain ordering for weird reasons. So let's look at the models for the schools, which is where the grade level is. And there's a method that I have. Yeah, okay, get ordered courses. It has to do with there's a many-to-many relationship in here. Y'all probably don't care about these details at all, but this is going to be important for displaying them in an order that my users are going to anticipate. So we need to put courses here as the next thing that's in the context, and it will be a list of course, like so. Do I already import course? I do, cool. And then we need to actually get that. And I know I'm going to need to do some stuff to like add things to it, so I'm actually going to pull it out into a local variable. So we'll have courses will be grade level dot get ordered courses. And then we can add that to the constructor here, like that. Whoops, enrollment grade level, I guess is what we have to really do. Enrollment grade level. Cool. So now just doing that amount of work, like we've got this was just a sketch, but frankly, there's nothing about this is going to break. Like this attribute access is going to return none, so this for loop's not going to do anything. And then we should see some titles. So let's try it. Let's see what happens. I think it'll work. Cool. It works. Doesn't show anything of substance yet, but we've got our 3 courses. Okay. Now, next layer in this is we need to get the tasks. Still trying to decide, because this is where it's important to pick a name that's actually going to be meaningful. Let me check the model for a minute and make sure that tasks is not used. Apologies, I'm kind of spacing on you here. It says, so here's the name that we really can't use, course tasks. That's a related manager, because there's a foreign key on that. That's not what we're after. What we kind of want, what do we want? So this is going to give us a list of courses. We need to pull all of the work that a student did for that whole list of courses. I think that's what we're going to want as the right thing to do. And then once we've pulled all of that data, then we can kind of put it into a structure that makes it easy for the template to iterate through it. Okay, so we have the coursework model, and let's bring up the coursework model so you all can get a sense of what's in there. So the coursework model requires a student, and then it comes with this other stuff. It has the tasks and the completed dates, so on and so on. So let's do this. Let's do coursework. We're going to get, and I probably should make this a method on the model, but I'll refactor that later. Let's start for now with coursework objects, and then we want to filter on the student, which is part of the enrollment. So that's the first critical bit. And that actually, no, that would get like everything they've ever done. So that's not good. The other bit of stuff here is we only want stuff for this set of courses. Everything else is going to be extra. Because you can imagine a student that is going through multiple grade levels with School Desk, which is the case for my kids right now, and we wouldn't want a report that kind of grows every year. That's wrong. So in order to get the appropriately filtered set, we want to go course task is the foreign key, and then we want to look at the course that's associated with that, and then we want to do an in check, and we have the list of courses. I hope that makes sense to you of how we got the right set of work that they did. The other piece of this is we're going to we want to avoid querying like crazy, because, and this is the part of the danger of reports, is that there's so much aggregated information. I mean, there will be probably well over 1,000 pieces of data pulled here, and that's fine if you do it in a minimal number of queries. But if we're going to be doing this in a loop, and if we don't fetch all the data at once correctly, then this report generation process is going to be really slow. So we need to make sure that we tell the ORM to pull all of that data. So we need to say select related, and we need the related course task, because we're going to display that. And we don't, is that it? Let me think through this. I think that's it, because the course task will have a foreign key to the course, but you can access just that ID. So we already have something there. This will make more sense in a second, because I need to essentially flip the structure around and iterate through these things properly, and that's going to take some doing. So this is the query that we want. And then we're going to attach something, some kind of list to each of these courses. So let's go back to our template and see if we can camp on that until we pick a good name. So I could say something like tasks. And then you would have, then in accessing it, we'd have, what would we have? We'd have task dot course task and task dot coursework. That could work. I'm not wild about that. The other way to do this is maybe we say, well, this is dumb. We don't need to access with the dot operation each time. So I know that I'm going to want to use the coursework and task for each thing. So I can put this in a list that is a tuple, still call it tasks, but we could do, it could look like this, and then say have the course task and coursework, so that we iterated over it in a more simple fashion. That's feeling better to me. And then we can, from here, we can access like the, wow, I think it's description. Yeah, description. and the completed date are going to be the key elements that we're going to be pulling out of here. We're going to do some reformatting on those. So this is essentially what we're after. And that's probably what we want. Now there's no HTML formatting with this yet, so here's where we can borrow from this area. So let's use a flex and flex row for each of these items. We might not even that might be overkill. I'll do it for now, but this is probably overkill. So if we're going to make a row. This is going to be a div. There is another thing in this whole process that I'm a little afraid of, and that has to do with the time that it takes to do this. This will be a lot of data comparatively. For a whole school year, it'll have everything. And what I'm afraid of is that the time will exceed the amount of time that Heroku provides for the request. I think I want to say Heroku gives you 25 seconds or something like that for a request before it will time out. And that could be off on that number, but it's in that range. And I'm making a bundle, which is a PDF. There are 4 PDFs for every student. Now, if you only have one student, that's only 4 PDFs. But some families have many more than one student. My house has 2. Some of my customers have 3, 4 kids or something like that. And if they're making a PDF bundle that includes everything for their whole school year, you could see how this might be problematic. So one of the things that I'm going to have to do after this whole process is over is figure out, is this PDF processing fast enough? I'm going to probably use my spouse as the person to trial this out. I've already got this stuff feature flagged, and she's already been able to click on it, look at her current data set. But I need to do the whole thing with her and see how long that takes, and then kind of extrapolate out of like, well, when does this get too long and it causes a timeout problem? Because if it causes a timeout, that's where I'm crossing my fingers that it won't. This problem gets way harder because it goes from something that can be done by the web server in a single slow request cycle versus a fast process that says, okay, you're requesting a bundle, and then something in the background that has more time to execute can execute and generate the bundle and then store that bundle somewhere like an object store like Amazon S3, and then store a record in the database that, hey, you made this bundle, and so now you can access it. So the point I'm trying to make is that it's going to get way more complicated if I have to do that. So I'm hoping I don't. But we're going to be blissfully ignorant right now and just assume that this is going to work. So we need to do another div here. And on this div, I'll give it, there's enough formatting there that I might want to borrow what's in this commented out section. So let's do this. Uncommented out, so it's easier to copy. And then we'll take this div that has a bunch of stuff on it. And there's that. So now we've got a div there. And we can say, we can replace this school date.date. This will be our coursework completed date. One down. Whoops, typo. One down. Because that's really what the report is all about, just showing like what did they do, when did they do it. So we'll take this other row, and we've got, this will be the coursework, nope, not coursework, this will be the course task with the description. And we don't need a date filter. need to do a lookup here. So the description can have like multiple lines. There's that filter. This is what I'm looking for right here. Lines break BR. It's a template tag that comes from Django that turns any new lines that happen to be into a description into a break tag. And I think that's what I want. So we've got these two things. These are going to be kind of what we're after. So we need to populate this list of tasks, fill it with tuples that contain the course task and the coursework. And so the challenge is that there's a grouping. If you couldn't see it here, there's a grouping that we have to do on a course. There is a template tag that I'm considering using. I don't know if it's going to be the one that we want. Let's check it out. So Django template tags. Some built-in template tags, what we're after. The documentation right here. And the tag that I'm thinking of is called regroup. So regroup can do some like cool filtering. So here's the example. You can see a bunch of cities by some different countries. There's a problem with a regroup though. The problem is that, so this example has grouped on the country to get this kind of structure, which is cool, but the challenge is it naively assumes that all of the related countries are together. So India is with India, USA is with USA. If you don't have that ordering built into the structure, then what happens is you get, even if you wanted to group India and India together, if they're separated in the list, they won't group that way. So you have to, and I think it describes this as the limitation in all of these details. Yeah, here we go. Note that regroup does not order its input. So we have to do that much ourselves. So if I can take the list of coursework that's there and do a regroup on it by the course attribute and make sure that it's all the coursework is ordered by the courses, then I could get this. But I don't know that's going to work well. I'm going to assume that it's not for the moment and just do like the brute force approach, which may be fast enough. Like filtering that in memory in Python is not going to be too bad of a thing, I think. But we do want to probably, here's an order by that should be important. Let's order by the completed date. Because it's going to be kind of weird even if somebody did a task out of sequence, if the report shows it as like the dates are mixed up, people are going to be like, what the heck? So that's going to be pretty strange. Mujtaba, I'm glad you subscribed to the podcast. I'm kind of delinquent in producing more episodes, but I'm finishing up my Django. I have a series on my website called Understand Django, which is actually the source of like all the content that goes into my podcast right currently. And I'm on the last article, and I want to get that article done because I've been working on this series for 2 years. I'm just tired of it, truthfully. And then I'll get back to doing more podcasts. So that's the order of things right now. But there's a bunch of content there. Hopefully you can dig something out of that is useful to you. Water splashed up in my face. All right. So we're ordering the coursework by this completed date now, that's good. And now it's time to like I said, we're going to put them on these task lists that don't exist yet. So we want to go through each of the courses. So for course in courses. And we're going to do some stuff here. We're going to create this tasks, which is going to be a list. And then we're going to attach it back onto the course. So at the bottom, we'll have tasks equal tasks, like that. So now, rats. All right, sorry. Pausing to think. Sometimes the talking to you all, it's like I don't slow down enough to think about what we need. So we need to group this coursework by the course. So how can we do that? We can do this in like a couple of passes. The first pass, yeah, I do. So 2 years of podcasts to listen to, that's true, but there's only, it's not like a weekly thing. So I started every like 2 weeks right at the beginning. So I got a couple episodes out there, and then it became like a monthly thing. Then it became a less than monthly thing. So I want to say there's like 16 episodes or something like that. All right, so let's cycle through this coursework. And this is where I chose a really bad model name. Here's a pro tip. When you choose a model name, pick something that pluralizes well, because the singular for coursework is coursework. And that's not cool. So I can give it a different name. I can say coursework in all coursework. You can see the stupidity of this naming convention. Let's change this to all coursework. And what am I about to do? So we need a structure. We're going to do coursework by course is what we're after. And then I'm going to use a default dict, which will make sense in a minute. And that will be a list there. All right, so default dict. It's really cool. Do I already have it in here? I doubt it. No way. Yeah, okay. So in the Python collections standard library, there is this thing called default dict. And default dict is what it sounds like. Basically says if you encounter a key that is not in the dictionary, in a normal Python dictionary, if you try to access that key, then what you're going to get is an exception. You're going to get a key error, right? And default dict says, actually, if you get where you would get a key error, we will create something at that spot, at that moment. So this is useful. So by saying I'm going to use a default dict with a list as the factory function, anytime I do a key lookup, if it's not there, it will go ahead and create a list for me automatically. And what that's going to do when I do this loop through all the coursework is I don't have to do this check that says if, well, this is not the right loop, but if the course ID is not in coursework by course, then make a new, well, let me just write the whole thing out so you see it. Coursework by course, then coursework by course of course ID is equal to an empty list. This is the if guard that I'm trying to avoid. Nothing wrong with this if guard, but the default dict is a cool little way to get around this particular kind of checking. But this would have gone down in this area, so I don't need that right now. So we need to import the default dict, and that's from, like I said, it's from the collections module. So we do from collections import default dict. So now we've got that. And now here's the part that we're going to create a lookup table. That's what we're doing. And I'm doing a lookup table that will group all the coursework by a course, like the variable says. So once we have that lookup table, then when we iterate through the actual courses and are looking to create the list of coursework, it'll be pretty easy to kind of just pull out the list that we need. This is, again, I'm not explaining this very well. It's probably clearer just by seeing the code. So let me just shut up and I'll do the code and then we can talk about it. So coursework by course, I'm going to take the coursework.course task. That's something that we did do a select related on. Now careful here, I don't want to do, this is what I absolutely don't want to do. I don't want to do course.id. That would be really bad because it's going to do a lookup of the course that I don't need to do. That would trigger an ORM query right there. But here's something that is available to you with Django. Is like, this is just a foreign key. So the course task model has a foreign key to the course. It's kind of like the parent of the course task. And whenever you want to get access to the foreign key, you go from the foreign key's name, and if you add _ID to the end, it actually gets you the raw ID that's associated with that foreign key relationship. So what I'm really doing, the coursework by course is kind of a lie. It's really coursework by course ID, but it'll work for this purpose. So we're going to set that to be equal to the coursework. Nope, no, we're not. We're going to do an append. And this is where that default dict is critical of the coursework. Okay, so now I can explain this. So had this the key not existed yet, you'd get a key error because you'd get a key error, and then it wouldn't know what to do. But when the default dict is in place, it says, I don't have that yet, so I'm going to create an empty list, and then since that's the return value, we can directly call append on it to add the coursework to that. So it's a way of like automatically creating a list whenever you need them, just in time. So now, once we're done with this first loop, we're going to have this lookup table that is a set of course IDs as the keys, and on the value side will be a list of all of the coursework. And since the coursework was ordered by the completion date, it'll actually be the right order to display in. Hopefully all of that makes sense too. So the bit that we need here is we don't actually even need to create a tasks list. We need to go now it's down to a lookup on this coursework by courses, by course, and we do a lookup on the course ID, and that's going to give us the list. The problem is it's not in that tuple format that I said that I kind of wanted. Maybe that's okay. Or maybe I put in, here's the galaxy brain move, I guess. We'll put it, instead of being the tuple, we'll append at that moment a tuple of the coursework course task. So we're just at construction time we're getting this. I don't know why Black suddenly decided to format it that way, but whatever. So here's our kind of like 3 stages to this process. We're getting all of our coursework. We are then doing this lookup table by course ID, and then we're iterating through the courses and tagging on this tasks object that is going to give us that list. So now on our template side, I think we'll have everything that we need to unpack this appropriately so that we'll get a course task as the first element of the tuple and then a coursework. So with any luck, let's save this, try and run it and see what happens. See if I got it. Let's generate the coursework report. Whoa, cool. That's awesome. So it's really close to what I'm looking for. I think. What is it missing? It's clear. To me, it's missing a bit of space right above here. Like these are jammed up on top of each other. That was cool that all of the work essentially what amounts to about 5 lines of code that are just rewrapping because black is doing what black does. So the other bit that we can have is we want to give the vertical margin. Here, let's do this. Let's I'm sure that this has a margin bottom that's actually pushing the Science 3 down. But if instead we get rid of that, so we're not making the title handle the margin, but we make each course handle its own vertical margin. So margin vertical. Nope, not vertical. That's not it. Margin Y. Sorry, it's like XY axis kind of stuff. So that's saying give me 8 relative margin units above on the top and 8 below. It's equivalent to margin top 8 followed by margin bottom 8 if you're coming from learning Tailwind for the first time. So now we've got that. Now we can come back to our report again. So now we've got the spacing around here. Actually, it looks a little weird to have it be even, so I just did that MY stuff, but I don't want to. I like the margin top. I want there to be like a kind of feeling like a break between sections of here's a new start. So let's make the top bigger. So keep that as a MT8, but then the actual list of activities and tasks, I kind of want to pull a little bit closer to that title so it doesn't feel so distant. So to do that, I'm going to do, let's cut it in half. So margin bottom 4 and see what happens. Also, there are probably some small changes that we can make to get rid of a bunch of these invalid errors that are coming out of WheezyPrint. But we'll once we get the formatting down, we'll look at that. Yeah, that feels a lot better because now it's like clustered together. Courses report for Mark Lehman. Oh, obvious thing here sticking out to me is I do not want this stuff centered. That looks super strange. Especially these things are short, but I've seen how my wife does some of these and some of them get lengthy. So it doesn't make any sense to have that be like centered each. So let's go fix that. So take out text center here. It's fine for the completion date. That looks okay. And the other part of this is like, this looks okay on this stuff. Let's go tweak some data too. Let's change this like lesson 1 to something much larger, and we're going to see a different story. Let's change this. Lesson 1, we'll edit this to be something much longer. This is a much bigger description that will wreak havoc on the formatting of the PDF report. I promise. I think. Okay. That should be long enough to like cause some problems. So if we come back to our page and generate it again, then I'll probably be able to better illustrate what's going on. So yeah, I have a width constraint on both of these rows, and the width is equal. It's 3/6 because I was using 6 grid units, but 3/6, you know, we all know that math. It's 1/2, right? So what's happening here is that description is getting split right down the middle, which is massively wasteful for these things that have longer descriptions, and it's going to just push down the report. So I think what I want to do is then shift these numbers so that the completed date gets pushed over more. We'll play with some numbers here. So we'll just move it over by a sixth unit. So let's bump that up to 4 and change this to 2. And actually now I'm realizing that we could, this stuff doesn't need to be there. That's gone. And let's check it out. How does it look now? Okay, that's better. The other challenge is, like, if I do this too far, let's take it all the way to the extreme version of this. Let's do 5/6 and 1/6. And let's regenerate the report. See if it looks as weird as I think it might. That doesn't look too bad, actually. Because the truth is, no one's going to care about these dates so much as long as there is a date there. So I think that's actually okay. I was afraid that, like, the horizontal distance between the actual description and then the date would be like you'd find your eye tracing so much across. But the truth, I think the reality is, like, people are really going to look at this like a page, and that's not as big as I have it in my brain. Like, this is 100%. So I had it blown up there to see this really clearly. But at this size, like, this looks fine. I don't think I look at this and go like, oh, gross, I can't tell that this is going over there. If I didn't have the grid lines there, then sure, that would have not been so great. But there's enough guidance, just a slight guidance with that gray, to help steer your eye over here. Okay, let's come in here and tweak some things and see if we can get rid of some error messages that are in there. The Wheezy print does not like CSS variables. So it's saying ignored because there's CSS variables in there, and it's like, I don't know what to do with that. So what we can do to get rid of that is it's after border color and background color and color. What's happening, I think, let's just like give some space so we can see how many there are next time, is that the text blue 900 is not actually working because it's black and white because it doesn't understand CSS color variables. So we can get rid of that there. We can get rid of that here. And we can get rid of the border yellow here and the border yellow there. And I think that will pretty dramatically reduce the number of errors that are coming out of Wheezy print. Maybe someday Wheezy print will support CSS variables, but they don't currently. I'm not going to fault them for that. That's pretty good. I've had a good experience with the tool so far. And I want to see, okay, so we've got front end built there. Do this generation. How many warnings did we get now? Ooh, still a bunch. Why are there so many? Oh, you know what I bet it is? I bet this comes out no matter what, because it's probably definitions as it's loading up the CSS file. So it doesn't matter if I eliminate them from the template because it still exists in the CSS file. Okay, well, it was nice to clean up the template anyway. It makes this a little bit simpler for what we're seeing and reading. Okay, so that's the report. And it's built from the enrollment. So there's one thing left to do, and that's to plug it in to the bundle. So we spent that whole time on the admin page, which is all well and good, but truly the place that the customer is actually going to use this is in the bundle itself. So if we go to the bundle, It's not going to be in the context, it's in the views. There's a bundle create view. And here is the place where we want to add this thing. So we need to add right here, or right after here, our new report. So this will be the Coursework Report context. And I'm going to call this in the name. I'm not going to call it coursework. I'm going to call it course report. Or did I say courses? I said courses. Courses report. And it's going to take, and it's going to call the coursework report function and receive the coursework report variable. Now we need to import. No, I already got that imported. What's going on? What are you complaining about? Too many arguments. Yes, you're right. That is too many arguments. Neat. All of these are, context names are too long. Like that's very, very long. So let's do this. Let's delete report out of all of those because it's redundant. I know it's a whole bundle of reports, so we can just call these contexts and it'll be descriptive enough. Each one is unique enough here. And we'll see it from the class name too, so I'm not like losing anything. Probably faster ways to do this, but this is good enough. Whoops. And last one. Hey, cool. We gained a line. All right. Now, moment of truth. Time to go to the actual place where the report is generated and see what the final report looks like. So we can go to the report section. And this is, we've been looking, the sample data we've been using for this whole time is the 2021-2022 school year. We'll look at this page and I'll click the bundle, see what happens. Not a good sign, taking pretty long. I don't know, it's going to be close. I'm worried that performance is not good enough. My big fear is like, I don't know how to make it better necessarily. Okay. Let's open it up. So we've extracted the bundle. Here it is. It's got a 4 on it because I've downloaded this many times. And inside of it, we have a report for one of the 4 reports. This attendance report, there's something wrong with that. Look how big that is. Way bigger. Well, maybe it's just so much less data. Multiple pages, I don't know. I might want to poke at that one later, but let's take a look at this report, see if it matches up. It's exactly the thing we saw earlier. So it's got the course name. These are ordered in the way that the user expects because it matches the order that's here, which they can adjust through this setting over here. So that's good. And then it has the dates in the chronologically growing order. And what is going on there? That's interesting when I highlight it. It thinks it's a telephone number? That's weird. Well, I'm going to let that one slide. I don't know how to tell it it's not a telephone number. Very strange. But cool. All right, let's check out the coverage. Make sure that this everything is still 100% covered. I think it should be. I guess I could. There's a test I'm probably missing, but I'm not convinced that I want to actually test it. Although it may happen here when I'm doing this, that there's a line that's uncovered. And that has to do with that from enrollment method we made on that context and all of those loop conditions. I could test that stuff. And I have a feeling, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, there's a good chance that something's going to come back and say, like, those things are uncovered. Mujtaba, that is a great question. I'm not really good about putting together like an index of the streams, and I'm not really consistent on that part. So I apologize. I don't have a great start and end. Thankfully, I've gotten better about tackling these projects linearly. So you can kind of work backwards and say like, well, what's the first one that sounds like a PDF report? And then go from there. So apologies on that there's not a better way to do that. Okay, as predicted, the lines 87 and 92, I can almost guarantee that they are the inside of those for loops on that context. Let's return there. 87. Yep. And 92. Yep, those two for loops. So we need a test on this because I have to maintain, I don't have to, I choose to maintain 100% test coverage on my application because, again, this is only me that has to maintain this site. And if I didn't have 100% automated test coverage for my sake, I would have a hard time trusting that everything is still working. So anytime I get package upgrades that come from Dependabot or these other sources, of anytime I need to make changes, I have my continuous integration set up so that my code runs through everything that's happening, and I know that every line has been touched at least once, so that if anything blows up, I'm going to encounter that before a user experiences it on the site. Doesn't guarantee that everything is perfectly working, but it does goes a lot of the way there. So let's go back to the reports test views file, and we're going to make a new test file. We'll call it test contexts.py. And I want to test this class Coursework Report context. And I put test in front of that, and it needs to derive from my common test case class. Well, it doesn't have to. Again, these are conventions that I follow with my system. So the other one, from homeschool test import test case. And this is the test that we need is, did we get that task's structure in the way that we expect? So in order to test that, let's see. So test course has tasks, I think. So what is the minimum required thing to do this? We're going to use the same constructor. So we need to pull in from homeschool reports contexts, import the course report context, coursework report context. And I need a doc string. This is another thing that's helped me as a solo founder or solo project person is there was a time where I didn't give my test doc strings. I'm like, what the heck? What is this test doing? Sometimes their tests are obvious, but there are other tests that are not. So I've gotten into the practice of, regardless of whether I think it's important, I put in the doc string because the person who exists 1 year from now, hopefully, Lord willing, will be able to look at this and still say, okay, that was what this was for. So we want to say that the doc string for this is the courses have tasks coursework tasks annotated to each course. Okay. And then we have, let's do the thing that we know we need. This is the Coursework Report context. And we're going to use the from enrollment scheme, which implies immediately that we need an enrollment, which I'm going to get from an enrollment factory. So factories are a technique for building test data. There's a great tool that I use called Factory Boy. You can go check it out. It's a really awesome tool. I've got all the source code up for this project at github.com/mblayman/homeschool, so you can go look at this code. There's nothing, not hiding anything from anybody. So you're welcome to discover stuff that way too. All right, so we need from homeschool students, tests, factories, import the enrollment factory. Okay, and then what we're going to have to do is assert on, we want to assert that the context looks a certain way. So I want to assert that the context courses is going to be a list. I know that much. And what is that list going to look like? It will be, well, I'll have to do it like this. How do I build this properly? Yeah, I'll have to, okay. I think I got it. Just give me a second. So expected tasks is the structure that we're going to have on this. And we know that that is going to be a list, and it will be a course task and coursework pair. None of these data elements exist yet, and we expect that the tasks that are added to the course will match the expected tasks. I think this is the basic idea of what the assertion is going to be on the other side. I'm trying to assert on the structure that it matches up, because that structure is what's critical to make the template operate. So now we have to populate the coursework. So we can do, we have to build a coursework. So the coursework is also a factory. So there should be a coursework factory, but we need to wire together that it's not just for a generic one. It needs to be wired specifically to the enrollment that we just built. So that needs to have the student is equal to the student from the enrollment. So that is the first part. And the course task, oh man, there's going to be multiple courses coming from all sorts of places here. All right, well, we'll just get this wrong first, and we'll see what I'm talking about. I think the factory is going to generate more stuff than I anticipate. So the course task that's associated with the coursework is going to be equal to it's going to be connected to a course. It's going to be connected to the grade level. And again, this is all Factory Boy syntax here that kind of mirrors the Django ORM. So if you're wondering, like, what is he doing with the double underscores and stuff, it's a way of wiring all of this data together. But I need this specifically. This coursework has to be associated with that particular enrollment. Again, this is like the context of a student could be enrolled in multiple grade levels in multiple years. So this coursework is for this particular year, school year. So the coursework factory, I believe, is also in, the student's app. So now we have the now we have what? We have, this is the coursework course task. And then we can pull out the course. The course is equal to coursework, course task. We're like really going into the tree of stuff here too. So apologize on just getting deep into the model. Didn't anticipate having to write this test tonight. So it's a big tree of stuff that's all related. But what we care about is like what the context has on the other side looks like a list. But I know that this, I'm pretty sure this is going to fail, but I could be wrong. Yeah. Course got an unexpected keyword argument grade level. Oh, junk. Grade levels in. Don't worry about this part. This is just the many-to-many relationship here. Why it's getting extra confusing. Ooh, that was unanticipated. Why did that fail? I thought there might be more courses than anticipated, but it turns out I got none. So something happened along the way. Now we've kind of proved this out. We saw like the real use case. So I'm confident that the code on the other side is right. So something about my setup data here is actually incorrect in this scenario. So what would make this enrollment come back with no courses? That's strange. Empty list. Boo. Hiss. Not cool. So the way that this factory has to work is that coursework has to have a foreign key to a course task. So by instructing this here, it's going to make a course task. And then the course task itself has to have a foreign key to a course. And so by doing the double underscore, I'm saying I want to actually connect to that course that you're going to create, whatever that is. And then the course has a relationship with grade levels. All right, let's try this a different way. Maybe my brain is not remembering this right. So let's look for grade levels in course object filter, grade levels in. Well, rats. Course factory. Grade levels. Maybe Factory Boy is just not making this properly. Let me try a different tact. So right here, I'm kind of like working backwards and pulling the course out. So let's build the course first. And then it could be that this is failing here at this step. It doesn't know quite how to construct this. So let's do from homeschool courses, test factories, import the course factory. Nope, course factory. Now we'll build the course is equal to course factory, and now we'll say grade levels, because now it's more of, it's not an in check, it's an assignment. Maybe that was what was wrong before. That could be. That could be it. Okay. Grade level. Yeah, I think that was what was wrong before. I think this in is wrong. Let's try it without. See what happens. Hey, that was it. Okay. I had an in on there, which is like an existence check of checking is it in there, but really we wanted to assign the list of grade levels to that course. So we don't actually need to use this course factory. That was overkill. And I was a little bit surprised that the assertion passed. I thought there might be an extra course thrown in there, but I guess because of how we wired this, we got that right. Cool. So now those two lines, those two for loops, that since there is a coursework, it should hit both of those for loops right here. So there's going to be a coursework that comes back here, so it's going to go and populate this dictionary, and then it's going to iterate over the courses because we have a course. So it should hit both of the lines that are there. Moment of truth. Oh no. What happened here? What? I wonder. Ah. Okay. How did that happen? Now I'm confused. So this could be like, oh, Juan Carlos, sorry, I missed your question there. I'll get to it in just a second. I'm wondering if this is now reporting as a bunch of stuff is missing because this is the first time it was imported directly, and then the coverage wasn't hitting it before. So now I have a bunch of stuff that is uncovered. Well, that's unfortunate. I'll pause there though. So Juan Carlos, you ask, or maybe you just go by Juan. Sorry if it seems like a very natural name to say both. Yeah, it's a good question. So I have not configured logging in my app, and it is because I rely on Rollbar for hitting issues, because I frankly haven't had a lot of issues from my users. I don't have any. In fact, I've had 3 or 4 real exceptions that have happened from Rollbar to the point where actually Rollbar has like deactivated my account without me knowing it, and I went to log in and it said your account has been inactive. So hopefully I didn't miss anything during that window, and now I know periodically to go in there and check, like, hey Rollbar, are you still working? I guess they don't like people that make apps that don't have many exceptions. So yeah, logging is I have mixed feelings about logging. I think it is a useful diagnostic tool, but it brings with it a host of problems. And those problems have to do with, like, well, where do my logs go? If there's a problem, I could probably log it to a service, And maybe there are some services out there that will offer to like hold your logs for like a day or something like that. But log retention is like a real problem because eventually, like there's going to be a problem that you're not going to be able to react to right away. Maybe you're on vacation and something happened, and there's just a time where you can't react, and so because of that, it usually means that you want to have logs for a certain duration of time. And what is that length of time? I mean, I my day job, I work at a healthcare company, and it's called Included Health. And by being a U.S. healthcare company, we have to retain logs for something like 7 years or something like that. It's the law. It's like HIPAA, the Health Privacy Act. I don't remember what the I stands for, but the law that says how long healthcare data should be retained is in there. So in that context, like, we have to keep log information, and it actually becomes a problem of like, there's so much of it. What do we do with all of it? I personally have not found logging to be super useful for me for the debugging of my apps. It's been just not something I get a ton of value out of. I would much rather read a traceback and see the context of the data that happened. And I acknowledge that you can definitely miss out on what led up to that. But some of the tools, especially like Sentry, is really good. I'll put in a plug. Rollbar is pretty decent, but I think if I had to do the project over again, I might use Sentry, because Sentry actually has this like notion of, I think they call it breadcrumbs or something like that. So they give you like a bit of a history of what led up to the context, and that is really nice. It's powerful in that it kind of does away with the need for some of that logging stuff. So if you're out there and you're starting an app, use Rollbar if you want to. Nothing. Obviously, I'm using it, so I don't feel any ill will towards it. But check out Sentry; it's a really cool tool as well, and then do analysis of what's going to work better for you. That's why I don't use logs here. Okay, I'm kind of bummed that I've got all this missing coverage, and I'm wondering why. Oh, cool. And how do you feel? I'm curious. How do you feel about Sentry? Has it worked out well for you? Does it kind of do everything you needed to, or if you felt like you've been missing stuff when you've had problems in your apps? I'm wondering why this is suddenly springing up now. Is it because I didn't import this module before directly? Like, this is what's weird to me, is that I was definitely testing these contexts through the views. So why didn't any of this information come up before? That irks me. Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Yeah, before I was in, keep messing up my water here, it's splashing back in my face. Before I was in healthcare, I was actually in education tech too. So I dealt with both HIPAA and COPA, I think is the name of the Child Protection Act one, which is, again, I'm not remembering all the letters. It's COPPA or something. It's like HIPAA but for kids. And what you can do with kids' data, which thankfully is very little. Kind of binds my hands doing healthcare stuff, or like education stuff. But thankfully we had no interest in tracking anything about kids. That's kind of creepy. It's more into like, how do you teach kids how to read? That was what I worked on a project called Storybird, which was all about that stuff. Anyway, I'm getting distracted from the problem of what is this? Why can we look at this report? The coverage data is here somewhere. I think it's dot coverage. Yeah, dot coverage. So I should be able to say coverage HTML, maybe? Yep, and then I can open up HTML cov index, and we can see, well, that's weird. Oh, it's only showing the misses. So this HTML, the coverage tool, has a renderer built in, which is cool. And then you can go through and you can see what you missed. What? No way. How is this even possible? How can you, like, go through this line, hit these two lines, and then not hit that line? I don't buy it. I don't buy it for a second. This I might believe. If there's a case where I didn't provide the course ID, that I can believe. These other ones, I'm not so sure. These things are, I don't know. Let me try removing the coverage file. Let me also remove that HTML version. I don't need to keep that around. And running this again. Maybe something about the coverage database got messed up in that run. Because that was weird. Like, there's literally just a line that you have to get through, which I could believe on some of these aspects, but when it is nothing but a call to default dict with list, nope. That's just no way. There's no way that could be uncovered. If the lines around it are covered, it makes no sense. And if it comes up as that way again, at this point, I'll probably call it a night there, and we'll just I'll leave you with a mystery and maybe report back of what I found, but this is not very believable. Aha! It was a bad coverage file. Okay. I thought I covered all that stuff, so I was getting a little surprised there. All right, so let's add this all, take a quick look at the diff, and then we'll call it a night. So we created this new data class that has all of the context. We camped out a lot. Basically, the core of everything that we had to build was right here in this method. And truthfully, like this, I'm not even sure this should belong in this class method. It might be better off in the model, but this seems it's contained enough and it's related to a single report that I don't feel like the need to refactor that to somewhere else. So we built the structure that's going to go into the context. We added our testing, our like dashboard page, and then we added the new PDF report. We fixed a thing in the doc string. We put in the new report, the PDF function, and have this new template here. We created the test for the missing line with there. That was a little bit trickier than I thought. We have our test case for that dashboard to make sure that we test that view, even though we care very little about testing the content of that. It's mostly for just my purposes. And then we, in the views, simplified some variable names and then added the coursework report as part of the zip file. This is our testing view that just pulls out whatever enrollment, passes that on so that we can check it out. And then our template is shockingly simple. I love it. Got a header, loops over the courses, loops over the course tasks, and spits it all out with the dates. And then finally, that was the modification of the dashboard. That's really cool. So I think with that, I'm going to commit this, and that kind of wraps up the PDF project. Like, what's left to do on it, maybe is a better question. Because it doesn't actually wrap up the PDF project, but there are elements that I probably will not go over on stream. There is a feedback loop aspect to this. So now that I've produced something, what I need to do, again, is take it back to my spouse, to deploy it live behind a feature flag, and have my spouse take a look at it, look through each of the PDFs, and say, yeah, that's good, or you really need to change this, and have some kind of loop there to like fix up things a little bit before I take it to a broader audience. The second aspect of this is once she gives the green light and says, yeah, that's good enough, then it's time to turn it on for everybody and also announce it. Like if a feature doesn't exist, then or isn't announced, is how does anybody know it exists? Like, it might be there, people might stumble upon it eventually, but it'd be good to know that it's there. Also, the other bit that I'm not going to do here because it's really hard to do while talking is do documentation. So the other thing, I've got a reports section. We saw the help pages on my site earlier when we looked at the terminology, and this bundle is a feature that I think is really worth highlighting in that documentation. So there will be an announcement that will be like a content marketing blog post. I've got a blog on my website that lets people know. I have got an integrated notification system so that people who are actually using the site can see these announcements of new features, so that they get like a little present of, hey, here's this new cool thing for you to use. And then documentation. So all of those like bits of writing wrapped together to kind of make people aware of what's going on. And then I can do a little bit of social media posting on the Twitter account that I've got, say like, hey, this is a new cool thing. And I might get a couple more people to sign up and try it out. So that is the very like non-technical aspects that I don't really go over on stream because they don't translate well to like streaming, I think. But they are critically important. So but I think that wraps up this PDF project. So next is, I've kind of been, not neglecting, well, neglecting is I guess an accurate word. There's been a bunch of little things that have been coming up, little usability things that aren't quite outright bugs in the application, although a couple of them are, that need to be fixed, that my spouse has been stumbling upon or have been reported by my sister-in-law, who happens to be another user of the app. So I've got a source of bugs, and so we'll probably need to go through a couple weeks of polishing and fixing up the application before I start thinking about what is the next big feature. Because there are other big features that my spouse has been asking for that I just haven't had time to deliver on because I've been doing one thing at a time. So that's where I will leave it for this evening. Thank you all for tuning in. You're welcome to find this stuff on YouTube later. Give me a thumbs up here, subscribe if you haven't done that. It does help me out and does let you know when I'm going live and streaming. I do try and stream almost every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. The only times that I'm not doing that is when I'm either on vacation, which does happen, and I also run my local Python meetup here in Frederick, Maryland, so that happens to be on the same night as when I'm streaming. So about once a month I'm also unavailable to do stream stuff, but hopefully you've learned something here today and you've gotten some value out of this. And with that, I will wish you a good evening. Take care.